So hello everyone, and let's talk about what's going on this week. The first thing we've got going on this week, if I do the share screen correctly, is that I put up a poll for your final group presentation times. And I decided to change things up a little based upon some feedback I had in the sync sessions and based upon some feedback I had from past students. Rather than having you go present individually, I'm going to have you choose a day of the week and then a requested time. And then what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and group those together to make meeting blocks. And what I'm going to expect you to do is show up and stay for as long as you can for that meeting block, essentially, for your group, right? I'm going to try and keep these to no more than an hour and a half, right? But ideally, you'd come in and you'd do your own presentation, and then you'll watch two of your fellow groups presentations. Now, you can, of course, attend any of them you want. So if you want to attend another one, that'd be great. And in fact, I'm going to be putting up a survey that you can use to give me feedback about the other groups. And that survey will, of course, count towards your kind of participation points in the class, right? I really won't take any points off for not being able to, because I know some people won't be able to attend unless it's your own session, of course. But you know, the idea is these are kind of bonus points for the participation space, right? So feel free to attend as many sessions as you want. I will post the full schedule probably early next week to kind of give you some idea of when your final presentations are. Other than that, the other thing going on this week is that we have the reading on the Blair Witch and movie marketing. It's also about viral marketing in general and how viral marketing can hopefully be engineered a little bit, right? I really like this reading. It's actually fairly recent from The Ringer, which is a great little blogger website that kind of discusses in detail what the Blair Witch did well and how it worked out. The Blair Witch is a fascinating topic for me because it's might be one of the most profitable things ever. It was made for like $20,000 and wound up making in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So it honestly might have one of the best return on investments of anything ever made in the modern era, right? So take a look at that. It's an interesting read. And of course, we have the new videos this week in week 13, which are on video marketing and influencers, right? So take a look at that as well. You're hopefully participating in the sync session right now if you're hearing my voice, so that'll be fantastic. And of course, chapter 19 of the textbook is the corresponding chapter. I also want to make a brief mention. Alex was kind enough to mention it to me as well, but I'd forgotten to release the grades for the tactics and implementation section. So that happened today. I meant to do it on Monday, but it just kind of slipped my mind. So that should be all done, and you should be able to see the grades out there as well and get your feedback from that, so that you can hopefully improve your final projects before the final due date. Any quick questions? We have a guest speaker. I'll mention Roopa Bhat, who's in the room. I'll introduce her shortly, but are there any quick questions before we get to our guest speaker for the night? Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm gonna shortly turn it over to Roopa, but Roopa, oh, I just lost her exact title. We were just talking about what her title is beforehand, and I had written down here we go. Now I got it back up. Is the Senior Director for Platform Data Strategy and Solutions at Epsilon, a digital advertising company, and she is going to talk to us about cookieless marketing and the cookieless future. Of course, this builds off of our reading for last week. So hopefully it'll be very interesting for you. And of course, she's got a long history. Roopa's been working kind of in the digital space for over a decade, longer than that. I won't say how long, right? But she's been working in that space for quite some time and has quite a bit of experience in the digital marketing area. So this is also a great time to ask her questions about digital marketing and what's been going on in that space as well. So without any further ado, I want to thank Roopa for being here and turn it over to her to take over the presentation.
Great, thanks, Bill, for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Before I dig into the discomforting life of no cookies for us in the very near future, I assume everybody here has kind of have experience with marketing before or through the course curriculum. If not, and if anybody needs a brief introduction on what cookies are, what they do, just go off mute and let me know, and I could do a brief introduction. If not, here's what I plan to cover today. A bit of introduction, Bill already covered a lot of it, so it's easy for me. And kind of looking at where did these cookies start, how did we get here, and what was the background, and why should it matter to you as marketers? Bill just mentioned you, class went over this last week probably, so you already kind of know why you should care and what this means to you, but I'll quickly kind of go over that. And most of my focus is going to be around what do we do to move forward? So when the cookies are completely gone, what are some of your options as marketers? And my favorite phrase ever since I've started in digital marketing, and I didn't start in regular marketing, I started in digital marketing about little over a decade ago. And I come from the analytics side of the marketing. So I always say you can't market what you can't measure. So you definitely need to know what will you do with that cookieless word in terms of your effectiveness measurement. And then hopefully we'll have some time left for questions and answers. The fancy title of Platform Data Strategy and Solutions, what that actually means is I just lead an analytics practice for Epsilon and Publicis Group, delivering mostly on all things digital analytics, as well as the delivery of our identity solution product, which basically is empowering our clients to help build their audience strategy as well as measure the effectiveness. I come with both experience in both kind of like brand and the agency side. Been with Epsilon for about 7 years now. This is actually my first agency gig. Before this, I've been on the brand side all the while, even when I didn't work in marketing, and have worked with CPGs, financial services, and pharma companies. So I have seen marketing evolve across many industries, and I still have clients across many industries. I'm a technologist at heart. My starting was as a programmer, which also kind of, I think, helps me a lot in the field of digital analytics and marketing. Things become easier because of that. And clearly, since I started there, I've had a very non-linear career path. But again, with the technology background, I think it's made it easier for me to hop from one thing to the other. Quick call out to where I work. I work at Epsilon. It's a global ad and marketing technology company. We are one of the top ones right now out there with the ID platform offering. We also offer other marketing technology like CRM, digital media, loyalty, and email solution. There is some of the retail media running through our company now as well. A lot of the MarTech for Publicis Group runs through Epsilon. We are kind of like at the heart of it. Which, even though Publicis doesn't say, I kind of like, we kind of at Epsilon think that that's why they paid us $4 million for when they acquired us about 4 years ago. So how did we get here? The first cookie that ever got created and the first banner ad that ever went live was in 1994 on Wired. Now, I am not very young, and I was actually in the technology field, or rather in college at that time. And only thing I knew about internet was email and maybe some websites, like I believe Yahoo was there at that time, and you could do some Yahoo stuff on Yahoo. Other than that, I did not know anything about internet or things of internet, and that's how rudimentary state we were in 1994. But then anyway, that was when the first cookie went live and Wired tried a first banner ad. Obviously, it caught on very soon. People figured out how easy it was to monetize and throw ads at people on all of the websites. And within 2 years, we had DoubleClick that came into existence. And also IAB was established. So it just only took 2 years. Now, within those 2 years, were there no concerns? Did we think that cookies were just fine till like I think 2011 where EU came into picture? No. Actually, I believe Financial Times did an article in 1996, I want to say, saying how bad these cookies were and how this was a concern. So people in the field who understood the tech were not really worried about how they were being used to serve you ads, but they were worried about how could they potentially be used for bad stuff. And then Financial Times did a whole big article on it. And then cookies were deemed unsafe and people stopped using it for a while. But by 1998, obviously the browser companies never caught on and they never signed up for this. And they said, yeah, cookies are fine. We're just going to keep using it. So we had 1 billion ad revenue by 1999. That's how short a span it took from first banner ad to come to 1 billion ad revenue. So in a year, Google AdWords was found, the first ad server ever. You kind of could self-serve yourself. And by then, we also had the .com bubble peaking. So from then, about 12 years, digital spend. So I have worked in this span, dabbling a little bit around digital marketing. And in that span, I have seen days where digital marketers would just get budgets. Nobody would ask what you did with them. They were just playing around with it, figuring out it was a nice, cool thing. But in 12 years, it became a thing. And there was measurements, there was rigor around measurement, and people were like, okay, where's my money going? Where's my ROI? All of that happened within the decade. And now digital was actually, the ad revenue was exceeding the print spend. And by 2017, we were exceeding the TV spend. And by 2019, digital is actually more of the marketer's budget now than TV, print, and all of the other things combined. You have a box over here, which you can see why when I go to my next slide. So why should it matter to you guys as marketers, and why should it care? From 2003 to 2011, this is how the ad revenue has increased. And the very first attempt from the browsers or the companies that run browsers did not come in until 2017. If you guys remember, 2017 is where Apple came in and said, we're going to do our intelligent tracking. It just means that your cookies won't be there forever. It will have a it will expire at some point. You will only have certain time to share that information. By next year, Apple said no, and they were going to block companies using cookies for retargeting. And by 2019, Mozilla, your Firefox jumped on it, and they said they were going to do the same thing. People really didn't care because about 50% of the browsers in the US runs on Chrome. So if you are able to track about 50% of your consumer base and you're still able to target them, you're still okay. So the sky really started falling in 2020 when Google came and said, okay, we're going to stop tracking cookies as well. And I know they gave a date of 2023, which they have extended now. So it's in our word, it's kind of become a joke, like who cried wolf, if you guys know that story. But it's surely coming, right? Because Google has its privacy sandbox that it's letting marketers to play in. It's also started its survey platform to collect that data to monetize. So we know it's coming. It's eventuality, maybe not 2024, by 2025, we will be there, but these will be gone. So that is going to happen. So when that happens with Google, you are pretty much left with no browsers where you can collect data, you can know about folks, or you can target them. That's why you should care. So from here, how do we go forward? What do we do? What can we do? I call these, and this is completely my opinion. You ask different analysts, different marketers, there are different opinions, but I think we all kind of hover around the same theme that I have here. So in my opinion, there are 4 foundational pillars that you need to be ready with to tackle your marketing and your marketing budget in a cookie-less world. First and foremost, it's your first-party data. It's a word it's said many times, but as somebody who builds audiences, consults client for audience strategy, and also measures, I cannot stress enough how important first-party data is. Then comes your identity partners, or people who can supplement your data and clean rooms. Now, why are these necessary? Because you want to centralize your data as much as it's possible. Is it CDP? No, it's a step ahead CDP, because now you are going to be able to connect to your activation partners, activate your campaigns, everything kind of like with just a few clicks. Then you also have to consider some alternate channels, like Bill just mentioned, right? The movie marketing or something else. Like, what are those alternate channels that you can target your customers in? That's going to be one of the things to think about. And why is analytics here and what's analytics doing there? We will get to it in a while, but analytics and a strong analytics team has to be one of your pillars. And I see this increasingly now changing. When I started about 12 years ago, analytics was a separate group. It's probably sat under a different team, maybe part of technology team. No longer the case. More and more, I see clients and brands have analytics and marketing kind of joined at the hip. They all report to the same leadership. They're part of the same leadership because there is so much that analytics can cover in terms of how your marketing runs. I'm going to pause there for a minute if anybody had any questions or if I was going too fast, anybody wanted to slow down.
There are a couple questions in the chat. One, Israel asked a couple. So he asked, how effective are the in-browser countermeasures, right? He says he regularly navigates using Firefox with a browser profile randomizer that randomizes screen size and operating system. How effective is that in terms of preventing information from coming through? And I guess, you know, a related question to that would be what percentage of people are doing things like that? Do we have
so when you get to an identity partner, that's where you're going to overcome all of those limitations from browser-based targeting. So for example, our identity solution that my company Epsilon offers, we cover about 200 million IDs for the US. We cover a few other countries, but US focused, it's about 200 million plus IDs. So in US has about 330 million plus people. So that's a great coverage. How do we do that? Obviously, can't go into the secret to the sausage making, but what we do is we have a ton of our own first party data. And Stephen, I'll get to your question of what's first party data. So what we do is we have first party data where we know what you have shopped, where you have been. And this is because of the data brokers we have been, or the data partners we have been, right? And we resolve all of your email IDs, all of your cookies you have ever been anywhere to a single core ID, or you can call it as a brand ID. So it doesn't matter, I'm on Chrome or I'm on Firefox, or I'm in a non-incognito mode. There is an ID that's running behind me that knows it's Roopa, and it has, like, if it was our ID solution, we have about 8,000 attributes that tells brand what Roopa is and what Roopa does and what Roopa has browsed. So that's what gives the ability for brands to figure out what would I be interested in, where would I be browsing for this, and where can you target me? Stephen, the question, first party data. First party data is anything that you willingly give up to a brand. So let's say I had Roopa.com and let's say I was selling chocolates and you're buying chocolates from me. When you want to buy chocolates from me, when you come to my site, I'll have you register. If you registered, you probably gave me your name, your email, your phone number, your address. So all of that data I collected and stored for me, for my business, that would become my first party data. So anything business collects for their own usage and to serve the consumers, that becomes the first party data. And if, let's say, Bill had a business and he collected some first party data, now Bill and I have partnership to share data, then I would then be using that as a second party data. Sure.
Yeah, we briefly mentioned second party data last time, and the idea that might become more powerful in the cookieless future, right? Because these alliances of sharing data might be very
powerful. And then there are some data, and the term is escaping me. It's like, you know, a bunch of companies come together and you voluntarily opt in for that, and that way you collectively share data with each other. Like it is kind of worrying as a consumer. And on the flip side of it, I worry as a consumer as well. But as long as it's protected, so there's GDPR and all those things coming. Like if you want to opt out, you completely opt out, then you won't be targeted. But as a marketer and how campaigns run, I also know that I want some of the targeted ads. I want some of the targeted offers because otherwise I would not get them. So I think we need to get to a place where as a consumer, you have control over what data you want to give away and what data you don't want to give away and to who. All right, any other questions?
And just so you know, Roopa, I'll monitor the chat and
Yeah,
stuff.
sure.
If something comes up, I'll interrupt you. Okay.
Thank you. Let's move on then. So harnessing your first party data. You should have started yesterday. And I work with a lot of CPGs companies, as I mentioned, and they did really start yesterday because there are two things for CPGs. They either rely heavily on third-party cookies, right? Because they want to know if you are into mac and cheese, which mac and cheese you buy, where you have gone, what you have bought. So it's all cookie-based, it's impression-based, publisher give them that data. But you can only do so much with it. There is no texture to the profile with those third-party cookie data. So CPG firms have started collecting that data and figuring out who their consumers are, what their passion points is, what makes them buy your product, or what is that will make them buy that, increase that basket size and buy more from you. If you ever had filled out a sweeps, or if you had ever signed up for, incentivized profiling, which we call progressive profiling. So for example, maybe you went on a site, you just registered with your email to be quick and signed up, but then next time you sign in, they will incentivize you to give you to take some more information. And if you have done that, that's progressive profiling. And that's how some of the CPG companies have collected their first party data or built their first party data. First party data, you have it, you control it, you are not dependent on any other vendors or partners. So the more you have, the more information you have about your consumers and the texture you have about your consumers. When we do this for brands all day long, we do a data quality assessment, which is called 3 C's. We call it coverage, collection, and composition. Collection is how frequently do you collect it? How frequently do you update it? Basically, how recent and fresh this data is if you want to run a campaign off of it. Coverage is how many attributes you have about this consumer in your database. So for example, let's say you went out to collect 10 information pieces about a consumer, like their email, their address, their favorite product that they buy from you, so on and so forth. Let's say there were 10 attributes you wanted to collect. Of all of your records, of all of your consumers, how many people have 10? How many people have 8? So that's your coverage. Composition is the data you're collecting is even enough for you to do your marketing campaigns? Does it give you enough information to intelligently market to these consumers? So once you build, you kind of want to keep validating and understanding quality of your data as well. If you already don't have, like you should have started yesterday collecting it, but you don't have it, then you need to start thinking about making a plan to figure out how do you collect that data and how do you accelerate it, like I said, sweeps and progressive profiling, incentivizing, or how is that you're going to get that first party data. And then obviously you want to test these first party data only campaigns, like run maybe a third party campaign, like a first party campaign, and see what will be better and what will perform better. I can bet my money first party performs better, even when there were cookies. We've done this, we have done when we help clients to run like campaigns with the first party only audiences versus third party audiences. First party audience always has a higher incrementality, they always buy more. So at least it's with CPG people, because the more you know, the better you can market, and you're not wasting your impressions, and it's a very targeted campaign. And the identity partner we spoke about. So you want to find a great identity partner, or maybe two, based on the brand you're working for and the business you're serving. Maybe one identity partner is not going to be enough. All these identity partners, we kind of now have a phrase that you have your wall gardens, you have your Amazons and Facebooks in terms of wall gardens, where you kind of your first party list went in, you did what you did, and you just got a few metrics back and you really didn't know what happened and how effective it was otherwise within the walled garden. But now with these identity partners, you can bring in all your data sets and you can measure it the way you want. You can look and slice and dice the data to figure out how effective your marketing was any which way you want. So you're basically kind of building your own park. I've listed a few identity enriched partners here. They are in no particular order other than the ones that I kind of remember and my clients kind of use. Of course, ours is the first because ours is the best. I work there, I have to say that. So which identity partner will you choose for your company? Best in class is not always going to be the best for you, or probably most of the times it's not. Here is where you'll make best friends with your technology team, because they are the ones that will help you understand which identity provider is going to work best for your company given your stack and how it can integrate internally with all your other systems, how it can integrate seamlessly with your activation partners where you want to send out your audience. So you have to figure out what's best for you. What's probably best for Kraft is not necessarily best for Unilever. So you still have to do that assessment. You go through the whole process and then figure that out. And is authentic targeting better or universal ID, or do you want to do both? So if you didn't know what is authenticated targeting, that's another alternative that's coming in to identity partners, which is where you will have a universal ID. Like I said, Epsilon has a core ID, right? And one ID for one person doesn't matter where you are on the internet. What authenticated targeting is doing, and this is being built by Trade Desk, they are, I think, calling it UUID 2.0. What you do is you willingly sign in on one website. And when you sign in on that one website, you give the authentication partner consent to log you in on all other websites that they are connected to. That way, once you log in to maybe Roopa.com, who's selling chocolates, and I have partnership with Will and a few other folks, you have given permission to be tracked on all other sites that I have connected to. So is that better or ID better? It depends and time will tell, but at this time, I'd say you probably need both. And definitely ask for a test trial before you sign on to this identity partner. What's a test trial? Use their system, figure out what is that match test is going to be. Like if you bought your first party data, let's say you bought in 100 million IDs, how many of them get matched to their data set that will enhance that'll give you the texture for your first party data. Is it 80%, 70%? How does that look with different partners? So obviously the higher the match, it's going to be better for you as a marketer. And a reach test. So run a test campaign and see if you ran this campaign, how many people did you reach? How much was your wasted impression? So that will also help you determine which partner is actually right for you. And then last portion is mostly for CPG and retailers, but retail media is a thing now that's coming up. What's retail media? So when you go to Walgreens or when you go to Publix website, all the ads you see, so every item they sell, every brand they sell, and the ads you see for them, they're not free. They're basically running a campaign within their own website to serve you ads or promote one product over the other. And by doing that, obviously they have collected data. They know about consumers, who buys what, who prefers what. So now the retail media networks are also rich with data and they have all of this information. And by combining retail media networks with your ID partner, maybe you have some synergies and you have some scale that you would want to consider. So that's one thing to think about as well. Then coming to alternate channels, what's digital and doesn't need cookies? Trackable airtime. It is getting really popular now. So maybe we are, inversing that curve a little bit where digital took over the linear TV. It's still TV, but I guess it's digital sort of, because connected TV, all of those smart TVs you guys have, the LGs and the Samsungs, where you go on all these apps, they're all tracking. So you can use that data and run ads with the TV partners using CTVs or your OTTs like Hulu and Netflix, when Netflix will serve ads. And the DOH, which is actually digital out-of-home billboards. I don't know how many of you had seen or read a couple of years ago, or maybe like 5-6 years ago. I think it was in UK, they came up with these digital billboards, which would try to read your emotion as you passed by, and based on that emotion, it would serve you ads. It was a little creepy even for me when I about digital data, but those things, right? It may not be as targeted, but based on the context of where you are and what is that you're trying to sell, those probably are one of the options. And programmatic audio, so just as your programmatic display, programmatic audio is something up and coming, so that's something to consider as well. Then there's macro data, which is like weather and location and temporal data, which is like what time, at what time intervals, what works better. These are some of the things to dabble into as well. Weather data, in my opinion, is not utilized as much in some of the businesses. I think it's really, really useful. Even this is about probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was working with J&J and cookies were still a thing. Nobody was stopping them. But we did a test to see, and this was in the spirit of serving personalized content and personalization. And we did a test to see, we were serving some content in those zip codes where allergy was high that day. And we served, as soon as you landed on the page, there was a digital master brand page. As soon as you landed on it, we would serve you content based on allergy, and there would be a very small minimal Zyrtec coupon, and we would, ask you to click that Zyrtec coupon and buy Zyrtec. But in other areas, it was like, I think, a $5 off Zyrtec or something, which was basically really monetized coupon. And the hypothesis going in was people obviously are not going to care for 50 cents versus $5. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but that's how drastic it was. All the content engagement that came in, or most of the content engagement that came in, was in the areas that allergy was peaking on that day. So that good old digital notion we have, that market in the moments that matter, it really does matter. So using some of those macro data based on your marketing campaign and use case can be useful, and you don't really end up having to need cookies or any of that. And then audience strategist or a data scientist. If you are a marketer, you obviously have an audience strategist you work with who helps you figure out with your activation partner, how are you going to curate that audience? What is that audience going to look like? You get a marketing brief and somebody will help you translate that marketing brief to say you need male, age 35 to 55, who shop for XYZ. Now, you already have marketing audience strategists. Do you really need data scientists? Yes, you do. And it's not an or, it has to be an and. Why it's time to bring data scientists into inner circle is because now you're using all 5 of your data. You're using your first party data, you're using all the second party and third party partner data in your identity solution that help you enrich your first party data. And you need a data scientist to make sense of it. So for example, let's say your first party data was small, maybe about 5 million IDs. And based on your brief, you netted out with a very small set of audience, which is maybe, I don't know, 800,000. That scale is really, really small for you to run an ad, let's say. What will you do? You need a data scientist to take that and build you a model that can scale that 800,000 to a larger audience. Will a simple lookalike do? No, some cases it won't, and you will need some data scientists to figure out, how am I going to take this data that I have, what donor data, which is the other data sets you have access to, will help me seed and join these together, and how can I fuse them together to build a model which is of scale and which I can use in digital activation. So it's going to be an and. You're definitely going to need more and more data scientists on your team. If not your team, make a friend who's on the other team. But they are going to be your go-to to help kind of get you that right-sized audience. Use predictive behaviors and then build hyper-targeted audiences. This is really necessary now because you have the means to make your media dollars work stronger. So your media dollars can go longer, go further, and you can probably reduce those wasted impressions and have more targeted ads and more targeted campaigns. So to do that as well, to figure out what are those predictive behaviors. So if Roopa did this, what else Roopa can probably do? You need a data scientist to build those predictive behaviors and that next best action sort of thing. That is your contextual targeting. Now, why is this not one of my core pillars? To some it is, but to me it is not, because A, it's already existed. People already use contextual marketing. This is not a new thing. And if it was your part of your media mix based on your business, for all means, yeah, continue. You don't want to be taking away from what you were already doing, because this does not run on cookies. It's not creepy. It's not invading anybody's space. So it's fine. It can run. But does it replace your targeted ads? It does not. So before you decide to shift your media dollars from your other digital channels to contextual, you need to think about a few things and run some tests, check for efficacy of how good this does for your purposes and your use cases, what that ROI looks like, and then shift the budget. A lot of the noise on the street now is fine, cookies will go away, let's just do contextual, but it's not going to get there, because effectiveness of people-based marketing is always going to be greater than what contextual marketing can achieve. What do I mean by that? Let's say I want to go hiking and I need hiking gear, and I am in market now to buy hiking gear. Do I need hiking gear only if I go to a sporting website? No, because I need hiking gear regardless if I'm on NewYorkTimes.com, Wall Street Journal, wherever I am on digitally, I'm still looking for that hiking gear, not only when I'm on sports sites. So if you did contextual marketing, you would get me only on a sporting site. You would not get me on all those sites where I was browsing and you knew, or rather I needed hiking gear. You guys did not know I needed hiking gear, so you could not target me over there. Which is why people-based marketing will still work. We just have to figure out a people-based marketing without the cookies. My favorite term or thing that I always said, you can't measure, then you can't market it. And this is one of my favorite JFK quotes. Time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining, not when it's raining. So we know cookies are going to go away, it's eventuality. Sure, Google has extended that timeline. So now we have the time to kind of plan for it, get things in order, test a few things, and figure out what that word looks like for us in 2 or 3 years. First thing I recommend starting is at benchmarks. If you have worked on your campaigns and if you've worked on your brands, you probably already have a measurement framework that tells you what's your desired outcomes, business objectives, what are the metrics that will ladder up to these desired outcomes and business objectives, and what's that measurement plan looks like for you. If you have one, great. If you didn't, build one. And if you had one, update them, because you want to take a look at all those metrics and KPIs that were coming in that were cookie-based measurement, and build a plan to replace them with the measurements that are not cookie-based or alternate or proxies. Then you would want to run a test of campaigns to run with the cookies and one without the cookies, and kind of see when you run without the cookies, what those metrics look like. Are you getting the same ROI? Are you getting the same ROAS? And how has that shifted now when you ran without the cookies, and kind of benchmark them. So when you finally go cookieless, you know what to expect, and you know probably your ROAS was 4, and if it is not at 4, you are doing something wrong and you need to optimize. And then obviously you need to adjust them, like I said, by measurement framework. So your channels benchmarks will vary by channel. Display probably is going to be impacted the most without the cookies. Email probably not as much because the cookies had nothing to do there. So you would have to adjust your benchmarks by the channels. Multi-touch attribution. When cookies go away, it becomes even more unreliable. I say even more unreliable because even now with cookies, it's as reliable as you would like it to be. We make a lot of assumptions, a lot of the MTAs, nobody tells you what runs behind them when they, all these media companies, mine included, when they give you an MTA report, we probably don't tell you all of those computation that goes behind and the assumptions we have made, weightages we have put on channels. So there's still a lot of assumptions we do when we run these MTAs. And it becomes just more reliable when the cookies have gone away, because when the cookies are there, these assumptions kind of still scientifically make sense. MTA will still work like it does today if it's a closed ecosystem. So if you ran something within a closed ecosystem where everything was on the same market and everything kind of ran within that ecosystem, MTA still will be reliable. If you go outside of the ecosystem, it won't be. My favorite thing, I think, what we'll take on once cookies will go away is the incrementality measurement. So you were looking at this incrementality not by your lagging indicators like sales or things like that, like how we measure incrementality now. This is more of an incrementality when you run a solid test and control foundation. So you, in every campaign, you will run some tests and you run some control segments and you figured out the incrementality between them, which will then tell you what impact individual channels had on total revenue. Am I optimizing my upper funnel properly? Do I need to pull some levers, adjust my marketing budgets on different channels? So in my opinion, that's where the industry is headed. That's probably what's going to be like your next MTA or replaces MTA in the cookieless world. And then that's all I had. I know it was a lot and I went through quickly, so we'll take some time, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Roopa. That was fantastic for sure. I think there was a lot of content in there, and I think it's interesting because I think you had some great points for people who are just starting out in this space and heading into it, but also some good content on the more deeper levels, right? And just to kind of highlight one just there at the end, that some of our students, we've talked a little bit about attribution in this class to some extent, but not probably at the detail of like talking about the software providers that are out there and the analytics tools that are out there. So could you expand a little bit more on MTA and kind of what that does for you as a marketer and kind of what the solutions out there look like in that space are?
Yes, and so the attribution usually is, let's say I got an ad from Rupa's chocolate company, and I saw an ad. I Googled, so I saw a search ad, and then because I saw a search ad, you cookied me, I'm looking for chocolate. So when I went on New York Times, I saw a display ad, and maybe then you emailed me because I never bought anything. So you hit me on all of these channels. And then ultimately I purchased, let's say I purchased after the email. With the email, probably you threw me a coupon and you said, if you buy my chocolates, I'll give you $5 off. So I went and got it. Before MTA came in, what brands normally did, we either measured the last touch or the first touch. What that meant is we gave credit to the channel that converted me, which is last touch, or we gave credit to the channel that brought me in, which is first touch, probably search. So all your digital analytics tools like Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, these all can easily run first and last touch. Adobe is a little sophisticated. It gives you a few customization to run like a J-curve attribution, a U-curve attribution, where you basically are giving credits to each of the channels in some fashion. What multi-touch does is it tries to figure out which channels you were hit, how many times you were hit, the frequency cap, right? How many the frequency, and the latency, like when did it start, the time decay of to like, we have some time decay going in there to figure out how relevant are the recent channels versus the one that were served like, I don't know, a month ago. So all of these different vendors, they all have different recipes obviously going in. But the crux of it is we are trying to figure out where did you see the ads, how often did you see them, in what duration you saw them. And then we will run these algorithms to say, this is how your MTA looks like. And then we will give that attribution, and then it will kind of tell you which channels are better versus, which channels is working stronger for you and which channel is not working as strong for you. And there's also something called MC.
Great explanation. That was a fantastic explanation. Yeah. And that's,
Sure.
Yeah, I think we've talked about what the attribution problem is. We've talked about first and last touch a little bit, but we haven't really talked about the multi-touch and different aspects along those lines.
Yeah, and there's also something called a multi-channel attribution. So if in case your system cannot get all of the impression data, we make some assumptions, and we make some assumption to which channel probably saw, like, served how many ads and how many you saw in each channel based on the budgets you run on each channels. It's similar, it's not the same. That's another measurement that's out there.
Awesome. A couple questions coming on the chat. So Alex asked, and she kind of stole the question I usually reserve for the end, but I'll ask it now, right? What are the skills, platforms, et cetera, that you recommend for people who are heading into digital marketing to learn more about, especially in a cookieless world? And the way I sometimes ask that question, if someone has goals of getting to your position in your career, right? What things would you recommend that they learn or develop in order to get to that space?
It's a really good question and a hard one, I think. What I can tell you what's helped me, and probably that gives you some insights, Alex. So what's helped me is an understanding how it's measured. Now, am I a data scientist, like, who can write fusion models or write MTS? No, I'm not. I just know conceptually how this works, and I can connect the dots for the marketer. So knowing all the channels you run ads in, knowing how much marketing budgets work and how you pull those levers to, figure out how to optimize your upper funnel, mid funnel, and lower funnel. All of those things, basically all of the very strong marketing foundational aspects, they will help. And in the cookieless, like, the two things that are really buzzing everywhere now are the ID-based solutions and the authenticated, which is the Trade SKU ID. So kind of understanding how you can use these ID-based solutions, how you, as a marketer, you can leverage them, what happens when you bring in your data, or if you didn't bring in your data, if you just use, let's say, Epsilon's People Cloud, what does that give you? How can you run your marketing? That will definitely help you. I think what I tried to do today is kind of give like a entire overview or a breadth of all things that are going to happen with the cookieless marketing. And if you double click on each one of them, you will be able to learn more and more, and then you will connect those dots.
So Stephen has a question, and Stephen, you may have to illuminate this a little bit, because I'm not sure I completely understand the question. How does someone come up with a cookie to be used on websites? Do you mean how are cookies generated? Is that the question you're asking, Stephen? Yeah, he says that is the question he's asking.
Yeah, cookies are generated by technology behind it. So you basically just dropping a piece of code on the website. So if I am a data ad server, and I serve you an ad, with the ad I'll drop a piece of tech on your website that will keep collecting what you did on that website, like what you browsed, what you clicked, where you went. With that, next time I come in, I'll read off of that. So I now know the information of all of the things you've done, and then I keep collecting data till you delete those cookies.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so they we I used to actually, I don't do this anymore, but I used to actually open up the Google Chrome folder
Yeah,
where the cookies are and show that it's literally just a piece of text, right? Like
yes. It's
it's
just,
nothing more
you can
important.
open in Notepad. And there are
Yeah,
first party cookies too, which are still going to stay, right?
yeah,
So for example, when I worked at my previous job, we wanted to serve ads without running through ad server. We wanted to show our own ads based on your profile. But unless you logged in, I don't know what accounts you have, what relationship you have with me, and what other products can I offer you. So once you logged in, we would drop a cookie on ourselves that told the website that what type of account relationship I held, what tier of accounts I held. So next time you came in, you didn't have to authenticate yourself, and we could still run that carousel ad to show you other credit cards and other banking products.
yeah.
Those will still stay, by the way, unless you block cookies altogether.
Yeah. In fact, I don't think, I mean, I made this comment last week. I'd be interested to hear what you think, Rupa, but like, I honestly don't think, I think it'd be impossible to get rid of first party cookies to a large extent, right? Because the very basic, the world, HTTP and the world of the web is a stateless world, right? And so cookies are the only way we have to kind of maintain any kind of story or through line on the web, right?
Yeah.
So unless the web somehow we went back to a web, like we couldn't make purchases, right, without cookies,
No.
essentially, right?
Yeah,
And so,
I know there's GDPR, right? Like in Europe, you
yep,
cannot drop a cookie without consent. I
yep,
spent 6 weeks in summer in Europe. I cannot tell you how annoyed I was. In a week, I was like, drop all the cookies you want, because every time you go to a browser and every screen you go, it keeps asking, do you approve cookies? Then you have to select which cookies you approve. Probably you're seeing on some of the US sites now too, because of CCPA. And it's annoying. And in Europe now, it's evolving to say that it is spam, because you get it, that alert gets dropped on you so many times, they think it's spam now. So they have a different issue they have to deal with.
yeah.
So I think we will eventually end out in a space where some sort of tracking is still going to be okay, as Bill said, because otherwise you can't run a digital world.
Yeah. Yeah, I do feel like maybe there is I actually saw this, like, so I use Ghostery, for instance, which is
Yes.
an anti-tracking toolkit that's pretty popular, right? And I noticed just this week that they've now started offering a tool that will allow you to automatically answer those questions about whether you opt in. And basically they have it set up so that you can say, so never track, right, but accept the rest of the cookies, and then
Yes.
it'll automatically do that for you.
Yeah.
And so I think that some of these extensions might be
That will come in handy.
And-
Probably a new area of business that will develop.
yeah. And and like a lot of these extensions, Chrome will eventually look to it and be like, oh, that's a good
Yes.
idea, and then they'll just build it into the Chrome, right? So
Yeah. And we used to use Ghostery a lot. My husband's from tech. He always used Ghostery because he never wanted to be tracked nowhere. But then eventually it came to a state, I think about, I'm going to say maybe around 2012, 2013, you couldn't block all of the things. Like you couldn't run a Ghostery and block everything. Like you can't even log into your bank site anymore, because there are those essential cookies that you need to run.
Yeah. In fact, I wind up finding I have to pause it more and more now as an option to pause it, right? So we're just about out of time, but we have one last question for Partha that I wanted to bring up, which is, when we say cookieless, I assume it's only from a digital marketing or sharing information. Don't we still need cookies for easier visits to the site? Yeah, and that's the part that was what we were just talking about with regards to first party cookies, right? To a large extent. Is there anything else you'd add on to that, Rupa?
No, I agree. So when we talk about cookieless, it's for marketing. So it's basically digital targeting. Your first party cookies, or those essential cookies that you need to run a site, will still be necessary. And if you block them all, sometimes you probably just can't run that website, and consumers will get fed up and then consent to the essential ones anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ripa. Thank you for coming in. I think this has been illuminating for me, for sure, right? I've learned a lot about what's going on here. Why don't we all give Rupa a virtual round of applause, and thank you very much for your efforts and time.
Thank you
today.
so much. Thank you for having me. And I know it was a lot of content and I tried to cover it up. If you have any questions, happy to take them later. You can feel free to reach out. My LinkedIn's there, my email's there. Thank you
Awesome.
guys.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, and can you send over the slide deck, Roopa, just so I can make it
Yeah,
available?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think actually you sent it already.
I did, yeah, it's the same. I did not make any changes.
Okay,
no.
good, awesome. So yeah, I will make it available, Jude, so it will be available for everyone. But yeah, thank you so much, Roopa. Thank you everybody for attending today. Thanks for asking the questions. And we are off next week because of the Thanksgiving break.
Yes.
But I'll talk to you all the week after that. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great break.
Bye.
Bye.